ดีครับทุกคนครับยินดีต้อนรับครับ Welcome to another coding session with Spot Skills. Today, what are we going to do? We're going to focus on, we're going to continue our series with looking at the web page and just figuring out how to make HTML and CSS out of it. So far, จนถึงตอนนี้ครับเราเห็นเว็บเพจนี้ครับเราทำ focus ข้างบนที่นี้ครับ with our menu bar. We had our unlimited web hosting section next to our subwoofer section and get started in contact. We built some utility functions. We showed how to be able to use margin to be able to shove things from the right to the left and overlap items here. We experimented with grid and flex to be able to figure out how to arrange items. And we saw a little bit of responsiveness. ยังไม่ทำทั้งหมด web page ของเรา responsive. We'll do that at the very end because every device will be a little bit different. And then we just finished up doing this section in the last time we spoke. So part 5 was about how to arrange these items just purely using flex. And now we're going to come to our services section. ตอนนี้ services section ของเราดูแบบนี้ดูไม่ดีน่าเกลียดมาก. How do we arrange this? จัดอย่างไรครับข้างใน page ดูแบบนี้ครับผมจะแสดงว่าใช้ grid วันนี้ครับเมื่อวานหรือครั้งที่แล้วครับเราใช้ flex ตอนนี้เราจะใช้ grid ใช้ทั้งสองวิธีข้างใน web page เหมือนกันได้ครับ so we'll just take this section by section. So in here I have my services section, services intro, and all of these. There is some cleanup. จำเป็นต้องทำความสะอาดนิดหน่อยครับก็ผมจะแค่ใส่ทั้งหมดนี้ข้างใน container อีกหนึ่งครั้งครับ so we have all of these elements, these 6 elements, services, or sorry ขอโทษครับ yeah, so I want to put all of these into a container. And why is it that I see I have an extra div here? I don't know, but we'll fix that in a minute. Oh, that's this div services card. ขอโทษครับไม่เห็นถูกต้องครับ there we go. So now I know what I'm doing. Okay. And we'll copy all of this and sorry, not copy, but we'll move it over to the side and we're just going to stick in a div.container and move that div down here outside of the button so that everything comes in the center. And we see that everything is now moved into inside of our container, not quite in the center yet. We will fix it, move it into the center in a moment. แต่ข้างในนี้ผมแค่อยากเพิ่ม services content just in case I want to be able to edit this, modify this, whatever it might be. I'm just adding a class to it. All right, so now let's work on our services. We saw something up above here. Why should you choose us? Very similar. เหมือนกันกับ our services. So what we can do in our style CSS is we can just go up above and copy our about intro, about title, and about para because we've kept the names very similar. And in here, I'll do services. And if I just copy and paste that in here and change about to services, เราจะเห็นว่าเกิดอะไร so all of that just comes in automatically. Very cool. So inside services, I can also just do a text align center and move this one up top here and get rid of the services intro, and all of it will now move into the center. Very nice. So all of my elements are in the center now. All the content is in the center. A little bit easier way to do it. So now we can focus on ตั้งใจบน service cards. So services cards. We can do a display none just to make sure we have all the elements. Cool. We do have all those correct elements. And let me make this so that we have better screen real estate. And now what we can do is work on putting all of these items into our grid. So services cards is set up like this. It is the topmost element, and inside we have 6 cards. 1 2 3 4 5และ6ครับ So we have 6 different elements in here. We're going to arrange all of these in a grid fashion. So services cards display in a grid. and once they come up, nothing really changes. But what we're going to do is tell the grid how it should be laid out จำเป็นต้องเขียนว่า grid ใช้อย่างไร so grid template columns and we want one frame per column and that's it. And so now I'll have two separate rows. Very cool. We're getting closer to what this looks like. All I did was one frame or three elements, 1, 2, and 3, and that's it. That's all I want. 3 evenly spaced elements per row. So what I want is a column of this width, a column of this width, and a column of this width, evenly spaced. So if I added in another element here, we're going to have 4 columns. And once we have 4 columns, the other 2 elements shift down to the bottom. This is not what we want, but we can do this. Like on the flip side, if I did 2 columns, now I have 2 entire columns, and the rows just keep adding and adding and adding. So if I had 8 elements, 12 elements, 24 elements, it would still be 2 columns, and they'd keep on going down. So แล้วแต่คุณครับคุณชอบดูอย่างไรครับ however you like it, whatever the look you like is, keep going with that. But for this purpose, I'm going to try and stick to what this page has done so far. And that's it. Now I'm going to add in some margin at the top. Margin, top and bottom, 50 pixels, and auto on the left and right. And that should do it. Or actually, I'll just do 0 on the left and right. But that's all I really want. And there we go. So now we might have to come back and change this. We'll see. But that should be 50 pixels all around is fine. Or if I want to do a grid gap, I can. But before we do that, I want to leave that the same or leave that the way it is. And I want to show the sizing and the borders and all that so it becomes clearer when we actually do the spacing. So I'm going to give this a display none, make sure I have the right elements. Cool, I do. And here we're going to just do a border 1 pixel solid, and let's make it far primary. So give it the primary background color of the green color that we have. Cool, all of these look really nice now. And we're going to give them a border radius, a rounded feeling. Border radius of, let's say, 30 pixels. Nice, we have a nice rounded feeling to all of these now. And now in here, just to give them some spacing, I can do what's called a grid gap. And a grid gap automatically gives it the spacing to be able to separate from each other much nicer, much easier. This way now, if I wanted to, I can do a margin top of 50 pixels, margin bottom of 50 pixels. And that gives me some spacing up on top and on the bottom as well. Perfect. So sometimes you're going to have to play around with this, but if I just did margin 50 pixels and 0, what may happen in some browsers is you might get this distinction of some boxes being bigger or smaller. So one thing we can do is go to Developer Tools, and we can see that all of our elements are now spaced out properly. So if I go into my container services, I have my intro, I have my cards, and then I have my button, the 3 elements. And inside here, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. I have my 6 services cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so if we hover over them, we see there's a div services card. Up here in the corner, you'll see a div pop up when I hover over this. And you see 460 by 97 by 238 by 7.73. And so we see that the size of all of these is the exact same. So grid gap gives us that consistency to be able to say, whatever the element is, I want the math to be magic and give it a grid gap between all the elements of 30 pixels. So that's it. And we are done with these cards. Now, if we want to make them narrower, we can. If we want to make them wider, we can. It's completely up to us. But inside the .services card title, the card image, I think it is. I can't remember what I called it right now. Services card IMG. If we want to make that bigger, we can. If we want to give this padding, we can. I'm going to give it some padding, internal, top and bottom, let's say 50 pixels, top and bottom. and left and right, I'd say 30 pixels, and just see what that looks like. So now we've got some space in here. It's starting to look a lot nicer. We have this dedicated hosting having a green background, but before we do that, let's fix up the title. So .services card title. We want to give this a font weight of normal, and that will make it a lot closer to this. And let's just increase the size of that so it's easier to see. And then we want to be able to give the paragraphs a little bit of a line height. Services card para, and this is really up to you on how you want to format all of this, but inside here, just showing you that you can do all of these things inside here. And it looks like there's probably a margin top on this one of probably around 30 pixels. So it gives it some extra space. Maybe make this 60 pixels. There we go. So now there's some more space. And on our card, give this some margin top. And up to you on how you want to play around with this, but I'm just showing you. 40 pixels. So perfect. Now we've got some space. So now they've got this green background here on the second element. So very similar to what we did here, it's got that same thing. We're going to give this specific one a green background. And so this one would be our second card here. So services card second or 2, up to you what you want to call it, services card second or 2. I'm going to use 2 here because we used first up top, or actually I should use second for consistency's sake. So I'm going to call this services card second. And inside our services card second, I am going to come just below here, dot services card second, and give it a background of var minus box color. That's what we used in the past. And then we see we have our dedicated hosting, color is there, and that's it. So this one has a specific border of gray. So instead of having the border here, where did I put my border? There it is. I can put the border here to be very specific for this one to be gray. And now this one will have a gray border to it, a little harder to see, and the color they use might be a little bit different. See if we can't zoom in, and they probably added some gradient. I'm not going to mess around with that today, or box shadow. I'm not going to mess around with that today. We'll cover that in a future section when we get into animation and box shadows. But now we'll just work on this read more button down here. And the read more button, we've created a button class. And the button class we can grab from up top here in our utility classes. So all I have to do is just add in the button keyword. แค่จำเป็นต้องเพิ่ม button keyword ที่นี้เลยจะเปลี่ยนไปถึงวิธี or C นี้เลยจำเป็นต้องแค่เพิ่ม C บน color or บน button ครับ so dot services button, and we just want to give it a background of var dash dash black, and that's it. So all we have to do now is inside our services margin top, and we can do margin total, and left and right is auto. And there we go. Now we have our spacing down below. So hopefully, in review, what do we do today? We basically applied grid to arrange these items here. We can make them narrower or make them wider, however we want to, and then we'll work on being able to put them into a flex container in the future, and we'll work on being able to make them more responsive. And then as we increase the page, basically we keep to our 3 elements per line here. So in review, what have we done? We've done our top menu item, we've gotten our showcase items, we've done display and flexbox as both examples here if we want to. We've gotten this section purely flex, this section purely grid, and we're coming along quite nicely. And then we'll continue on with our email and contact and side-by-side elements here. With that, we'll talk to you guys next time. And if you have any questions, leave us comments in the Facebook section or in the YouTube section. So feel free to suggest anything we should learn, or if you want to learn something new, give us a heads up and we'll try and make a lesson. Thanks. Have a great day.